Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. My name is Reed. As always, with me is Mike. So, episode 4 of our What is in the Stack. We just our weekly kind of show. Mike and I will kick it off. We'll talk about a topic, kind of just debate and kick it around for a bit, and then we will walk through what is in our respective stacks for the week. What are we reading? What are we enjoying? As always, part of the fun for us is let us know what you guys think about the topic below and what is in your stack for the week. Mike, our topic for today. Me and you have done a
Yes.
lot of videos this year on kind of older characters, right? These characters that have meant a lot, whether that's Thor, Hulk, Captain America, Batman. We'll post some of the links for those below if you guys want to watch any of those. But
Don't forget
mainly
the
we
Flash. Don't
the
forget the
Flash as well. Um,
Flash.
we've talked about these older classic characters and why we love them, why we cherish these characters, why they still, 30, 40, 50, 60 years later after their creation are still entertaining new generations of readers. One of the things we knew did not see in this list is there aren't a lot of new characters that are in that list. You have a few breakthroughs. You have Deadpool, who was, I think, 91. You had Venom, who I believe mid 90s or early 90s as well. I guess you could trace it to the black symbiote costume when that
Mhm.
happened, but
In
Venom
the
as a
80s.
character on his own hasn't been around all that long. Cable broke through a bit. You've had Miles Morales, but largely we do not seem to have as many characters that hit the way they used to from its origins in terms of you look at Marvel, Jack and Stan, a lot of what they produced is still on the shelves today. And certainly our heroes that are dominating the sales stands really have been characters that were from 30s, 40s. Wolverine is what mid 70s is Wolverine, and that he's by far one of the more popular characters. He's one of the only ones that's not out of that late 30s and 60s thing. So, Mike, for you, do you think it is that the older creators just simply created better characters and kind of used up all the ideas? Or do you think newer creators just aren't as good? Like, why do you think there is such a gap where some of these new characters just don't take off the way that a Batman or a Spider-Man or a Fantastic Four did?
I think that for the legacy characters built such a strong foundation. I think part of the problem is so you're a publishing company, right? And you have to make money, and you've got a stable of characters that are tried and true, and we're just going to truck them out every month because we need to get the sales. And then every once in a while, somebody comes up with a great idea that gets published. I'm not saying there's not great ideas out there because I think there are, but it's just hard to break in when you have this stable of powerful characters that get you sales every month. So I think it's a little bit of nostalgia. I think it's a little bit of the publishers. And I think it's a little bit, if we're talking like the last 30 years, there are a few that have broken out, but it's going to take some time for them to get the legs that, Superman and Batman and Spider-Man have. And they may never truly reach that level. But I think from a publishing standpoint, they are publishing what they know will sell, and everything else is a risk at this point in a business that's in a shaky place. So I'm not saying there aren't any great ideas out there. I just think that it's hard for them to settle in, and it's especially hard for them when they're not committed to. They give them a 6 issue miniseries. They come in as a side character, maybe like one of the mutants, and they try an offshoot book and it fails. It's a publishing thing more than anything else. For example, if you were to erase 80 years of history and just start with, a new batch of characters, who's to say that these new characters wouldn't, catch on? But that time is come and gone. And we do have these legacy characters that everybody loves and wants. So it's going to be really hard for a new character to break through. I think A, they got to be committed to it. They got to put it out monthly. And B, they got to get creators who love that character and really want to write it for it to have a chance to succeed.
It's interesting that I won't deny at all that nostalgia probably is the biggest reason. Why do people like things? I look at myself just in terms of sports, right? Like, why am I a Chicago Bears fan? Well, my dad was a Bears fan, and
Why am
so
I
I
a Raiders
follow.
fan?
Yeah, I follow the Bears because that's the family legacy I had is the Bears, right? I do look
Right.
at comic books. A lot of why I read the comic books and attach to the characters is my dad and I used to watch old Batman, the 66 Adam West show, right? And the Saturday morning Batman cartoons. And that was what was available. And so as a kid, that's what grabbed me. So I do think nostalgia, it's hard to say, like, if you erased those memories, would I have still picked the Bears as my favorite team? Would I have still picked Batman as my favorite superhero, right? I do think where the newer characters fail. Um, like you said, I think there is a little bit of dedication that's missing. I think we don't really put the resources into them anymore. It's kind of like, hey, we're putting a 6-issue series out. And basically by the third issue, if I know it's a 6-issue series, you kind of determine whether you're going to pick it up or not. It's really hard for me to pick up something I don't think is going to continue. And so I think the hard part for folks is by the third issue, because the solicitations are out 3 months in advance, you kind of know it's ending. And I think for a lot of people, it's like, oh, I'll trade wait. And then the trade doesn't really happen or comes out later. And then he just loses track of it. I think why we have that, though, I think there's a couple things that happen with these new characters that make it to where you don't like the characters as much. One, I think there is an unnecessary adversarial take that some of these creators take on these characters to put them in competition with the classic characters. And as a fan, it makes you angry. And so I look at like Miles Morales. Part of why I do not like Miles Morales is there always seems to be this no, he's just as much Spider-Man as Peter Parker perspective that Marvel wants me to have. That Miles shows up in this universe with Peter Parker, and people are going, oh, Spider-Man. And it's like, for me as a Peter Parker fan, it's like, what? Get out of here. Miles Morales, look, I have no problem with the character existing. I think it's fantastic that a new generation of kids is connected with a new character. That's great, but don't try to pitch me that he's equal footing as Spider-Man with Peter Parker. Right? When we pick
Oh,
up a Spider-Man video game and you want me to play half as Miles and half as Peter, and you want Miles to actually fight Peter in the game, and I need to be Miles and beat up Peter, get out of here. No, I'm not doing this. This
right,
thing exists because of Peter. And I think
right.
because there's been so much integration of, and again, I have no problem with Miles. I'm not a guy who's going to pick up Miles comic books, but I think it's fantastic that fans like him. But there is this unnecessary, when you make Laura Kinney Wolverine, there is this, oh, she's just as good as Logan. When you made Jane Thor, there was this, oh, she's better than, there's
She's
an
better than Thor.
unnecessary adversarial piece. I think John Kent was another one where when they wrote the book for John Kent, it was we have to show that he's actually more inspirational than Clark. He's actually going to change the. And it's like, why do you have to try to take Clark down a peg to raise John? Just raise John, and if we like him, we'll adapt to him. And so I think there's an unnecessary adversarial piece that gets created by modern creators because I don't think they trust that their own creation will work. I think they look and go, if I can latch it on to Peter and people like Peter, then they'll just transfer their affinity for Peter to my new character. And then if I say my new character's better, well, geez, it's canon. This character's better than Peter. And it's like, it doesn't work that way for fans. Where I think you can see characters that have worked. Why did Deadpool work? Deadpool worked because he filled a niche in the X-Men universe, in the Marvel universe that was empty. The reason we like Deadpool as a character for comic book fans is there was no other character like him. This fourth wall breaking, kind of absolutely insane character. He plays perfectly off of Wolverine. He fits within the universe that we already love. Right. I
Yeah.
think that's why Cable worked. I think that's why Venom worked. You created these characters that you could pluck them into the world of these characters, and they fit and they would fill a missing niche. Instead, what I think they do with new characters now is it's we're going to move Peter out of the way and put Miles in. We're going to move Thor out of the way and put Jane in. And I think for us as fans, that kind of just it rubs us the wrong way.
It
I
rubs you
would
the
be
wrong
so
way.
much more willing to read a Jane Foster Thor comic if the comic was her working with and learning from Thor. If it was, hey, I've got these powers now, you've been doing this for centuries. Show me how to be a hero, and you'd have them grow. It's why I think we get behind characters like Dick Grayson because he's the protege to Batman. And you can have where when Dick Grayson overshadows Batman in a comic, part of you, because of that relationship as a Batman fan, he was like, yeah, that's awesome. Good for the kid, man. Like, of course he's great at
Yeah.
that. He's Batman's kid. Instead, it's more now with like Miles. Like, no, whenever Miles shows up in a comic book with Peter, I don't even need to read the comic book. Miles is going to be portrayed as more competent. Peter's going to be immature. If they fight, Miles is going to win. They're not going to put it in a position where Peter is beating Miles at anything, even though Peter's been doing it significantly longer as Spider-Man. To me, that's the piece that stands out. Do you think I'm right on that? How do you feel about that overall? You think that's on the money, or what do you think at?
I didn't really think about it that way, but yes, if you are trying to take down one of the legacy characters a peg and reposition a new character, I think it's going to rub the fans the wrong way. Um, I think, like you said, that these characters came out in originally when they came out, they were always in their own separate universe. And they didn't interact with each other. And then the All Star 3 came along, and all of a sudden, like we had the Justice Society. And so now they share a common world. That was groundbreaking. But like you said, each character had their niche and they fit in the world together. And now the world is very complicated and continuity is all mixed up. But if you were to create a new character, a strong new character, it would have to fit in that framework on its own and not be trying to, you can't, how are you going to compete with Superman? Come on now.
Yeah, I think there's that piece. I think the
Yeah.
other thing, and this is I get this more now when I read comic books and they introduce new characters. When I look at older characters, when Venom was created, or Deadpool or Cable, I feel like they created them with a story reason in mind. That, hey, you know what would be really cool? What if we got a time traveling mutant, right? And so
Yeah.
let's throw Cable in the mix and see what happens when we throw that mixture into the X-Men. What I think they do now is, instead of creating what's the cool story reason for this to exist, I do sense from a lot of creators now when they create a new character, it's, oh, I want a character who's like me. So what if I was a superhero? So I'm going to put this, and it seems to be more of this is my personal journey and my new character is a reflection of me in the story, as opposed to, hey, the X-Men are really missing this type of character. Let me throw it in. And so I think that's another reason they struggle in that, like, because I hear people talk about how newer characters, it's just because of bias from people like older characters. They're never gonna not read Bruce Wayne because it's so hard to. I don't really know because we've seen indie creators do this, right?
Yeah.
Spawn was. I'm not a Spawn fan. I've never bought a Spawn comic book comic. I'm a religious person. I disagree with a lot about this and then Spawn. But to be honest, Spawn is one of the most successful comic books we've ever seen. Why? Because Todd McFarlane came up with this original idea. He put it out into the market, and that character from nothing in the mid 90s, no Marvel branding, no DC branding, just a really cool design. I mean, I don't even like Spawn, but that costume is amazing. And they
It
throw him out
is.
into the universe, and it works. And Spawn's running, what, 300 something issues later? Still
Yeah.
publishing, still there. And yeah, is Spawn Spider-Man? No, but I mean, a hell Spawn character is not going to be as popular as Peter Parker intentionally, because you're not going to get that character into the toy aisles and kids. But Spawn's everywhere. He's in Mortal Kombat games. He's had a movie. He's synonymous with so many things. You look at the indie books that have created. Yes, those guys will never reach the level of Batman or Superman, but you can find success. I think that's the part where when you have the Marvel branding behind things, if you introduce a new X-Men character, as long as you integrate them into the story in a way that like doesn't like, hey, we need to replace Logan or kick Gambit out or something like that, we typically are going to be okay with it because you do get some of the affinity of us wanting to like this character. The same way with sports fans, right?
Yeah.
When a Chicago Bear gets drafted, when a guy gets drafted from college, he becomes a Chicago Bear. Hey, you're on the Bears now. I'm invested in you succeeding as a fan. You have that
Yeah.
jersey now. I want you to do well. And so
Yeah.
when they put a new character in an X-Men comic, it's not that we inherently hate this character. We love the X-Men. Cool, we have a new character. But you actually have to have a reason for them to be there. And that reason should be story-based, not, well, geez, the X-Men never had a character like me. So it's again, it'd be like if I started writing Batman and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna put a married father of two children who works like a corporate job, and he's gonna be integral in the Batman universe now. Like, read that kind of just seems like you threw yourself into the mix, and I think that would get
I,
rejected.
I think the original creators would just snicker and laugh because when they came up with these ideas, they weren't putting themselves in it. They were just going into fantasy, which is this is all about. This is, I know Peter Parker and Spider-Man kind of tried to take things down to a more real level, but it's pure fantasy and it's supposed to be fun. And you know, I don't you know uh, I don't necessarily want to read a character like that if I can't have fun with it,
Yeah.
especially if a comic's being didactic or whatever. That's kind of off-putting. Like, we buy these things because we want to escape. We
No, I mean that's the crazy
want
thing
to
to
have a
me
little
is
fun with them.
if I pick up an X-Men comic book, the last thing I want to see in that comic book is me.
Yeah.
In my life, I if I want to experience my life story, I can do that anytime.
Anytime I
The
want,
reason I
right?
crack the pages of X-Men is that
Yeah.
hey, this is this cool world with mutants and claws and sentinels and all these
Yeah.
ridiculous powers. And I think even your point, Spider-Man, right? Spider-Man made it more relatable. But Spider-Man, I think it's always overblown how much people think like, oh, I'm like Peter Parker. I guess. But the whole
Yeah.
thing is the reason we liked Peter is Peter was relatable.
Yeah.
Relatable in terms of we've all been where we've failed. We've all been, but that's just storytelling, right?
That's
So you can
good
go back
storytelling,
you can
right?
go back to like, stuff like Count of Monte Cristo or Three Musketeers, right? With D'Artagnan or whatever. There's characters in there that are relatable to you, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't need to necessarily reflect your life.
Right.
Peter, yes, you injected some real world problems into Peter. But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
Peter wasn't failing his math homework, going home and sitting on his bed like most kids are doing. He put
Right.
his costume on and go fight the Green Goblin, right?
Yeah.
Like, but we love that escapism. That's the part
Yeah.
of it. And I think with the newer characters, I think the biggest reason they do fail is that they just don't get the escapism piece anymore. It's about injecting themselves in the story or unnecessarily trying to like take down older characters a peg to bring up new characters. And I just don't think that works. I think indies is
I
interesting
think,
because we see indie characters connect, and it's
yeah.
because they don't have that job. But
I
like,
think, yeah, every time you put out a book where you're trying to take down the legacy character, you may get the shock value on the first issue, but then, we've seen it time and again. Sales tank, the miniseries gets canceled, it does or doesn't make it to trade, and that's it.
yeah, I think it's just interesting. I think it's kind of fascinating because we've just seen so many new characters kind of failed. I mean, what's so weird to me, I'll kind of close with this. I think when you do it properly, we accept new characters. Because what I will say, right? I am a absolute. I don't read Batman unless it's Bruce Wayne for most of the things. One of the only times I've not brought Batman, they killed off Bruce Wayne. I think it was Final Crisis. They made Dick Grayson, a character I love, Batman. I stopped buying the book for 2 years. I didn't buy Detective Comics. I didn't buy the Batman comic book. When it was Dick Grayson under the cowl because they killed Bruce, even though I like Dick Grayson, I refused to read. It's the only gap in my Batman collection is there's like 2 years where Bruce was gone, and I'm
I'm
no,
going
not
on
buying that.
strike. I'm boycotting that comic.
However, Batman Beyond, Terry McGinnis, where they made Bruce
Oh, that
old.
was good.
I
Yeah.
bought that. I embraced that. I love that character because to me it wasn't about. And I know they didn't technically do like oh Bruce stinks in the Morrison kind of Dick Grayson Batman run, but it's just no. I want Batman to be Batman. It's Bruce Wayne. And so I
Yeah.
think when you create a character though, Terry McGinnis worked because hey, Bruce is still in the book. He's a
Yeah.
mentor. He works, right? I
Yeah.
think the reason Kate Bishop worked as a character for a lot of people, she was Hawkeye's protege. It was cool. It was a good
Yeah.
relationship. It didn't take Hawkeye down. It fit something that worked. And I think if they would start doing that again with these newer characters, I think you'd have so much more success with a character like Miles in the 616 universe. Obviously, Ultimate Peter was dead, and they should have always kept him there. But if you
Yeah.
wanted Miles to really fit and work and become a great character where his sales were equaling Peter's, I think if you teamed him up and had where genuinely Miles was working and learning from Peter, the way that Dick Grayson learns from Batman, I think he could really create something special. Let us know what you guys think below. Why do you think newer characters aren't connecting as much with audiences? Do you think it's all nostalgia? Do you think it's maybe a lack of creative things? Do you think maybe just a lot of the ideas were used and it's really hard to find a new character to stand out?
Right.
Let us know what you guys think. Before we go, we want to go through what is in our stack. Mike, I will kick to you, sir. What's in your stack for the week?
Oh my gosh, I went to the comic store yesterday. Look what they had. They had facsimile of
Your
Flash. So
facsimiles, they finally got to your Jay Garrick on the facsimiles.
curse you, DC Comics. They also had a foil edition, so I had to get that one. And then just because I got another one in case I lose the first two, because that's what Flash fans do. Anyway, so I only bought one copy of the monthly Flash, three overpriced copies of the facsimile because I can't quit it. I have to
I
do
think
it.
you are single-handedly keeping the facsimile market alive. I buy a lot of facsimiles. You're the guy buying multiple copies. I'm pretty sure you're why the stores here are so many.
Battle of the Black Stone. It's amazing. Of course, I got another facsimile because I
Right, Son Infinite, yeah.
and then Epitaphs of the Abyss, the new EC, Ultimate Black Panther #10, Cruel Universe. Here's another indie I got, Murder Kingdom,
Yeah.
and of course, my beloved other Flash,
Gordon. Yeah,
Flash
we'll have
Gordon.
a couple videos upcoming. We're going to talk about Flash Gordon. I think that first arc ends this month, so we'll talk about where we think Flash
It's
Gordon's
pretty
at.
freaking cool.
And I think next week we'll have a longer video on Battle of the Blackstone Conan and how much we loved that event. Um, I picked up quite a few books this week. I'm only going to show a couple here that I looked at. One I wanted to highlight, Ghost Machine. I've really liked Geiger. I've really liked Rook. I really liked Redcoat. They did a second kind of wave of new number ones. I was not a huge fan of the Hyde Street book they had, or I think it was Hornsby and Halo. I didn't like that one. But there was this book, The Rockefellers, if you can kind of see it there, about this kind of family from the future that has to move into the past to protect themselves. Really cool kind of sci-fi thing. Reason I want to highlight this. One of the first comics I've read in a while that was like a family-friendly, fantastic comic book where I think you could hand this to kids, you could hand it to just people who aren't huge comic fans. And I love the fact that Ghost Machine put a book like this out that really seems to be more of a family-oriented, kind of kid-friendly comic. Who knows? Down the line, they could go way off the course and have it. But I thought really cool, cool art from
That's
Francis
awesome.
Manapul, Peter J. Tomasi. Wanted to highlight that. I love when they do family-friendly books. I think that's really cool. So I really good there. And then for me, Black Friday shopping, I finally got the other one. I bought the Nightwing Omnibus. Another character I've always liked, but just haven't really dug into. It was a great sale on this Luke Cage Omnibus, the
Oh,
original
look at that.
kind of stories that he's had. So, I mean, so many good characters. You got Englehart, Isabella, McGregor. I think what
Yeah.
Mark Wolfman, George Tuska. I mean, so many good creatives working on this
Tony
book. So
Isabella.
really enjoying those. This will probably be in the stack for a week though, because that is quite a thick comic book. But really
That is
enjoying
a
that.
tome, sir. That is a tome.
Really enjoying it. It's just cool to go back. I think one of the things I love doing as a comic book fan is going back and revisiting some of these characters that you've always known were kind of in the periphery, but you maybe didn't pick up the singular issues. Luke Cage, really cool character to read. And these omnibus format that Marvel puts out, especially if you wait a little bit, you can find them on sale. I ain't going to drop $150 on any kind of thing when they come out, but if you give it a little time, they get reduced in price, and so really cool to pick that one up. Let us know for you guys. What is in your stack for the week? What are you reading? What are you enjoying? We'll have some reviews coming up here. We're at the end of the year, pretty much, Mike. We're almost done with December. So we'll have a larger
Hard to
review on
believe.
Flash Gordon coming up, on Conan the Barbarian, the Battle of the Blackstone event. We're going to talk about that. We'll go through our best comic books of the year. We talk about that, and I think we're going to talk about some new DC stuff. I know we've been kicking around some of these new DC titles, so we'll talk
Yep.
about those as well. As always, folks, thank you so much for watching. God bless you. We'll catch you in our next video.
Thanks, everybody.